this week's video, the ultimate oil filter shootout for Subaru turbo engines. So, in my EJ255 top 3 failure video, a lot of questions were asked about oil filters, what oil filter to run, which oil filter I prefer, what I recommend, etc. A lot of questions in the comments below that video on oil filters and what to use. So, what I did was go out and buy a ton of filters for a 2005 Subaru Legacy GT with the 2.5 EJ255 turbo engine. Basically, all these filters are for it. There was a little bit of a disconnect when looking at the Purolators. I have a 14612 in the Boss and the One, and I have a 14615 in the standard Purolator filter. There is not much difference between the two. I have had people tell me they are interchangeable before. Looking at them side by side are almost indistinguishable from what I've been told. The difference between the 12 and the 15 is just the 15 is slightly taller and slightly larger in diameter, but other than that, they're basically the same filter. So we shouldn't have any big concerns with the Purolator lineup. The Fram lineup, there was a concern when I went into the local Walmart to buy the Fram filters. They had one of those little electric kiosks to look up the part number you need. And for the 2005 Legacy GT, it was giving me the part number of the 6607. We have the PH6607 in the Extra Guard. We have the TG6607 in the Tough Guard, and the XG6607 in the Ultra Synthetic higher tier Fram filter. I went to a second Walmart after doing a little bit of research online, seeing that on Fram's website, when trying to find specifications for these filters, Fram had a PH9715 that they recommended for certain Subaru models and wasn't very specific on the difference between the 6607 and the 9715. In my own research, I found that the bypass valve pressure in the 6607s is set at 13 psi, and I believe the 9715 is closer to Subaru's actual rating of 23.2. I believe that filter was right around 21, 22 psi for this bypass valve. The second Walmart I went to looking for this 9715 had a paper manual for looking up part numbers. It gave the 6607 for the majority of the vehicles, including the turbocharged cars, but there was an asterisk beside many of these, and at the bottom of the page stated to use the 9715 due to differences in the OEM factory specifications. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. The 6607 came up as a recommended filter on WRX and STI as well, so we're going to go with the 6607 for this comparison. Right or wrong. Then we have the Mobil 1 Extended Performance. We have the Gold K&N oil filter and the Royal Purple. They only offer one variant across the line. K&N does have an Extreme Performance filter, but I did not get it for this test. The Royal Purple, they offer one for this model, and Mobil 1 only offers one filter for this model. In our Wix filters, we have the base Wix and the Wix XP. We have a MAHLE filter. We have the CarQuest standard and premium oil filters. I have an OEM made in USA 15208AA12A Subaru filter, which is the recommended filter for the 2005 Legacy GT from Subaru. I also purchased a 15208AA15A, the tall boy upside down oil filter that is ran on the FB series engines, just for a comparison. I have a Mazda RX-8 oil filter, 2009 and up. We'll get into why I have a Mazda filter in this comparison later on in the video. Then we have a Purolator L14460, also a PL14460, which I did not purchase. It is an alternate number. We'll get into the details on that and why it's here later. Then here at the bottom here, we have two used OEM filters. This blue 4-cylinder filter came off of my brother's 2011 Outback 2.5i. It was on the vehicle for approximately 5,000 miles and had 5W30 CarQuest brand conventional oil running through it. On the right, we have the black Subaru OEM oil filter for the H6 engines. This came off of my 2014 3.6R Outback. It also has approximately 5,000 miles on it and also ran 5W30 CarQuest brand conventional motor oil through it. So we're going to cut these open and take a look at how they've held up over a 5,000 mile service life. But without further ado, we will get into the breakdown and look at these filters one-on-one. We will be dissecting the filter, looking at the end plates, the anti-drainback valve, the actual canister media filtration, the spring in the bottom if they have one, and their bypass valves, and do the comparison on the lot. And hopefully by the end of this video we will have a definitive or more narrowed down view of what the best option is for which oil filter to run on your turbocharged Subaru. Starting out, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Subaru oil filters and the changes they've gone through over the years. Originally, Subaru used a Japanese-made all-black cased oil filter for 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder models. These oil filters were produced by the company Tokyo Roki or Ruki. I'm not exactly sure what the pronunciation is, but from here on out, I'll just say Tokyo Roki. But Tokyo Roki was the OEM provider for Subaru for their OEM oil filters. They currently still manufacture the oil filters for the Japanese and abroad vehicles, but for the US market, Subaru went with a USA-made filter. If we look at our 6-cylinder filter here, they are still made in Japan, still black in color, and made by Tokyo Roki. In the 90s, Subaru started using a all-white canistered USA-made filter that was produced by Purolator. The Purolator Subaru filter, clearly marked. I'm going to have a picture. It was extremely hard for me to find a picture online of this OEM white Purolator filter. I used to have one on hand, but I cannot find it. But it was a larger case than this, much larger filter. All white, had our Subaru emblem, and right above that had the Purolator text on it. So we 100% knew that it was Purolator produced, made in USA filter for the OEM. And through the 90s into the 2000s, that was the OEM filter for Subaru on their 4-cylinder models. In the 2000s, Subaru switched up manufacturers and discontinued that filter in favor of this smaller capacity blue made in USA filter. This new blue USA made 4-cylinder filter is now produced by Fram, and we will get into a little bit more of that later on and compare this filter to the Fram filters head to head. So now that we've got a little bit of a history on the Subaru oil filters out of the way, we're going to do a quick look-see at the 4-cylinder Fram made and the Japanese made 6-cylinder filter, just to compare a little bit of the differences in the spec. And I know the 6-cylinder filter is much larger in size and capacity than the 4-cylinder, but we're just looking at the basics of the construction of the filter. Starting with our end plates, both are very thick, sturdy steel. Moving down, on our 6-cylinder model, we do not have an anti-drainback valve, but our 4-cylinder does have an anti-drainback valve. I'm not sure of the material. The Fram, if I can remember correctly, on their website, it was silicone or nitrile. I'm not exactly sure, but I could just about bet this is basically identical to the Fram design. Moving on to the actual filter media itself. On the 4-cylinder, we have a composite for our end caps on our media cartridge. They are of a material unknown, but it is a flaky, layered material, similar to cardboard or pressed paper, pressed fibers of some sort. And as we can see, it is fraying and breaking off into little pieces. Who knows when this actually occurred, whether it be at the end of life at the 5,000 miles or if it was earlier in the service life of this filter. But as you can see, There's little pieces of this fibrous material that are dissolving, coming apart on this filter case. Looking at the core of the filter, it is a rolled piece of metal that is bonded at the seam. There's a little bit of bead rolling inside, I'm assuming for extra strength, but other than that, that basically covers our media. Moving on to our 8.6 filter, other than the difference in the size of the actual filter media, much nicer construction. We see here a nice metal top and bottom end plate. We also see that the core is a single piece of metal rolled over to make the backbone of this filter. Both of these filters use a metal clamp to bond, to secure the ends of the filter media where they meet, where the part meets. And looking at the bottom of the 8.6 filter, we see that our pressure bypass valve is actually made into the filter case itself and is of metal construction. We have a nice coil spring inside that is supplying the force to keep this valve shut until bypass pressure is reached. If we look at back to our 4-cylinder model, our bypass valve and spring assembly are made as one piece. We have some sort of plastic composite pressure relief valve with a coil spring securing it to the actual media spring that keeps the media pressed up against the top plate off of the bottom of the case. And there appears to be no kind of gasket or seal between this plastic valve and the sheet metal spring. And then looking at the bottom of the 8.6 filter, our bottom plate spring for pressing the cartridge up to the top plate is just a stamped piece of steel. Both of our cases are about the same thickness gauge, have about the same give into them. We're not going to get super technical and pull out the micrometers and measure the sidewall thickness, but both seem to be pretty much in line. Looking at the actual filter media, it appears that both are relatively saturated with contaminants. It's hard to tell due to the discoloration caused by the engine oil. We're not seeing any areas where the filter is collapsed or the media is crushed in. The fins are still relatively straight up and down on the 4-cylinder model. Where we look at the 6-cylinder model, where we look at the 4-cylinder model, we got a little bit of a bow in it, but cannot tell if that's due to restriction pulling in or not. But that's our quick look at our 5,000 mile filters. From here, we're going to get into the comparison of our aftermarkets and a new OEM filter. So before getting in depth with our regular filters, our quote-unquote correct part number filters for the turbocharged engine in question, we're going to have a look at the Purolator L14460 or PL14460. I've talked to several people, one of which owns a Subaru performance shop. And as far as I can tell in my research and talking to several people, this filter is the old Subaru OEM filter. The 14460 is what our old filter was before Subaru shrank it down and went to this smaller filter. This is supposed to be the filter that was originally used on the EJ22s, the EJ25Ds, the EJ251s, and some of the 253s. When the 253's exhaust manifold was redesigned, where it basically wrapped around the oil filter, this filter physically is not going to work with those engines because it won't physically fit into the area that this one will to allow the clearance for the exhaust manifold. But as far as I'm aware, and what I've been told by the guy at the Subaru Performance Shop, that the PL14460 is the filter that they run on most of their builds for customers' WRXs and STIs. I've not checked this filter on hand for fitment, but I'm just going off of what I was told. But I'm pretty sure that the information I was told was accurate. But if you're wanting to know what the old Subaru Purolator OEM filter looked like, what the size was, and what the current number is for it, it should be this one, 4460, if you want to go back to the bigger filter on your older 4-cylinders or on your turbocharged applications. Also, you can still buy the black Tokyo Roki produced engine oil filter from Subaru, the OEM. You have to get it from outside sources, straight from Japan. There are a few performance websites that I found them for sale, but they're kind of higher in terms of cost. I think they're in the $20-$25 range is what I've seen after shipping all to get them into the country. But if you really want to do the JDM thing and get the OEM Japanese filter, you know, that's always a better option in my opinion than the little blue USA filters. Quick look at the unused blue USA filter just to compare what we saw with the used filter. So apparently the plastic valve is white new, but it yellowed on the old filter with usage. Here we get a better look at the end plates of that composite material, and as I stated before, it basically looks like it's cardboard. It's a fibrous, layered, paperish, pressed together material, and as you can see, it's already basically flaking and linting, little pieces of lint and debris. Brand spanking new, never run on an engine. We got quite a bit of glue here, nothing too much. A little bit of glue here on the filter media itself, but nothing crazy. I see a little bit of, I assume a little bit of the glue bleeding through this paper composite cardboard end plate, but other than that, nothing too disconcerting. But that's just a quick look at the, there we go. And as you see here, when I pulled the anti-drain back valve off, part of the end cap came off with it, some of the layers. So that's kind of disconcerting. Not that this would be pulled off during normal use, but that's a lot of debris potentially getting into your engine, and that's a lot of fibrous lint-like debris that I would not want to end up in my on my rod bearings or in the mesh screen to the turbo or anything else like that. That's kind of concerning that it pulls apart like that on our OEM filter. But I digress. We will get back to this filter and compare it to the Frams later. Real quick though, we're going to look at the F series tallboy filter. Same nice steel thick end plate. They appear to be identical. This is stamped with a 5N. This is stamped with a 5U. So perhaps there's a little something different in the thread and pitch of where it actually screws onto the engine block or filter block, but I don't believe there is. Our same issue as before. You see where I pulled off the anti-drain back valve. We have parts of the end plate coming up with it and coming apart in little fibers. Looking at the actual filter media itself, again, we've got basically just a larger capacity version of the little short filter. Same composite cardboardish end plates on our media. Same discoloration from the glue, I suppose, bleeding through. And we have our same stamped steel spring bypass valve combo unit. So now that we've looked at those real quickly, we're going to start getting into our Variants aftermarket filters. So looking at all of our lineup from Fram here, starting with our base model, our mid-grade, and our premium filter, basically everything looks the same between the filters other than the color of the can, orange, silver, and gold. If we look at the specifications that I was able to find through Fram's website, as I stated before, all of these bypass valves are rated at 13 pounds, whereas Subaru's factory service manual for the turbocharged engines has the recommended bypass valve for the oil filter set at 23.2 psi. So that's a little concerning to me that the bypass valve is 10 psi below the factory threshold. But when I looked up the specs on that PH9715, that was the recommended with the asterisk for certain makes and models, but it wasn't very clear on. The bypass valve in that filter is set between 16 and 28 psi, which is kind of a large and broad setting range. I guess there's that kind of variation across the manufacturing of that filter, but not sure exactly why the nearly 12 psi difference range basically for that bypass. But moving on from there, the top plate between the Tallboy USA filter and our Fram filters appears to be identical. It seems to be the same number of holes. Both are stamped with a U5. The only difference appearing to the naked eye is the actual O-ring seal on the plate itself, whereas the Subaru uses OEM Subaru uses a rounded gasket. The Frams have a squared off gasket. That squared off gasket appears to be the exact same across the entire line from the base model to the premium filter. The gasket on these, I'm not exactly sure of the material. I could not find on the Fram website what the material that the gasket was made out of. I did find out on the website that all three have a silicone anti-drainback valve. All three are marked as being produced, or I assume being produced by Parker, but Parker is on the anti-drainback valve, and if we compare it to the OEM anti-drainback valve, it appears to be identical, other than the fact that the OEM is black and the Fram is orange in color. Moving further down, we'll pull out our actual media itself and our bypass springs between the three. So looking at our cases real quick, just again, no scientific measurements, no precision here. Just eyeballing it, they all appear to be basically the same thickness and construction. The only difference appears to be the paint job and the part number. Moving on from there to our actual filter cartridge, we see nearly identical to what we found in the OEM blue Subaru filter. It is a composite top plate and bottom plate. Have some of that glue residue coming through. Same backbone, same bead rolled single piece of metal folded over and tacked together. And on our base Fram, we do not have a piece of metal joining our filter media ends together. It appears that it's just glued together. There's where our part is, where the ends meet. Looking at our tough guard, we do have that metal spine there that binds the end pieces together. So from just eyeballing it, it appears that the OEM filter, Subaru filter, is actually a Fram tough guard in construction. And then moving on to the ultra synthetic Ultra Guard Fram, I'm actually impressed here that there is a metal top and bottom end plate. We have some little fibrous material here, a little O-ring gasket that seals this cartridge to the bypass valve. The inner backbone appears to be the same construction as all the rest. Seems to be a single piece of rolled metal with a single seam down the middle with a little bit of bead rolling for extra strength, I assume. The actual filter media in the Extra Guard, according to the website, was just a synthetic fiber media is the only explanation only, well, a blend of fibers and synthetic for the media. Looks to be much thicker than what we have in our two baser models that from the naked eye look to be just a paper filtration element, but according to Fram, the TG is a synthetic fiber media, and on the PH it just says a blend of fibers and resin, so no real breakdown on what that actually is. And again, our union where our filter meets, nice metal clamp. Looking at our bypass valves, all three appear to be identical in construction. They all are the spring mixed with the bypass valve. All three look nearly identical and are basically the same as the OEM Subaru filter, aside for the actual bypass valve being black plastic rather than a white in the OEM Subaru filter. Moving on to our high performance aftermarket filters, we have the Royal Purple 10-2876, the K&N HP 1008, and the Mobile One M1108A. Looking at the outside of these filters, I've made a little bit of a discovery. It appears that basically they are made by the same manufacturer, or mainly made by the same manufacturer. If you look at the top plates on the Mobile One and the K&N, they are 100% identical as far as I can tell with the naked eye. Same number of holes, same thickness to the construction, and both of them have a letter Y cast into them at the bottom here. And looking at the Royal Purple, it is the same story. Just our Y is cast in the top here rather than down here in the bottom corner. But other than that, top plates all look identical. One quick little note on the K&N I thought was really neat, as K&N provides you with an oil change sticker inside their box. So moving past our top plates, we get to our anti-drain back valves. All three are silicone, and looking again, eyeballing it, they appear to be identical on the Mobile One and K&N, and the Royal Purple is almost identical as well, other than the color. Getting further down past the case, we'll get to the actual filter element itself and our bypass valves. So looking here at the Mobile One and the K&N, they appear again to be nearly identical in their actual media cartridge. Both have a helical center support to their canister. Both have the same markings in the corner here. Both have a number 4 cast into them. The pleats seem to be glued together at the seams, no metal support as on some of the Frams and the OEM filter. But other than that, I mean, other than this being slightly darker in color, looks to be nearly identical. Now on the Mobile One filter, there's quite a bit of excess glue that you see on the media itself and coming out here. I mean, they used a really good gob of glue, even some up here on the top on this cartridge. K&N also has a little bit, not as bad as what I'm seeing on the Mobile One. Looking on here to the Royal Purple, again, their casings look nearly identical, and the only difference here is that there is a number 3 cast in the bottom of this rather than a 4 like on the Mobile One and K&N, but again, extremely similar with the helical design inside for the support. But Royal Purple, man, that is a lot of glue, ton of glue, all in the filter media and all around the filter. Not too happy to see that. And again, it looks like they have glued the ends of the media together rather than fastening them with a metal fastener. Moving on to the bypass valves, all three are identical as far as I can tell by looking at them. They all are very similar to the OEM and Fram filters. They have a plastic valve in the middle, a coil spring underneath, and the actual spring for the media itself is a stamped piece of metal and integrated into one unit. If you look at the bypass valves side by side, both have an F stamped in them here on the K&N and the Royal Purple, whereas there is a letter B cast in the bottom of the Mobile 1. I don't know if there's any significance to that, but like I said, they look nearly identical. All the cases seem to be nearly identical too. A little bit thicker on the cases, just going by eyesight and feel. A lot more sturdy, especially the K&N, for having this extra stamped nut welded onto the bottom of the case. Nice little feature. You can put a 1-inch socket and extension on here to rinse this filter off, just because it's a little difficult to get in there around those hot exhaust manifolds during an oil change, reaching up there. And if we look at the bottoms of the casings, all three of these filters side by side are stamped with the same color stamping, same layout, and same font, and all in yellow, all saying product of USA in English and I believe in Spanish, and having some kind of serial number and a time, I'm assuming being the time in which they were manufactured. So I could only go to assume that all three of these filters are most likely made by the same company and are just branded a little bit different for the three manufacturers, other than the Royal Purple having the different style media inside. All very similar. Seem to be pretty well constructed. I like that they have the metal casings on their filter media. Like I said, they seem to use way too much glue though, especially on the Royal Purple. The amount of glue that is leaked out into the filter media. The filter media here is a more gauze-like, and it appears from what I'm seeing here that it is reinforced by steel mesh, very similar to the Fram Extra Guard Ultra Synthetic filter. And these appear to be a paper filter element, but if I remember correctly from what I saw on their website, it was a not much info on the website. The Royal Purple did say that they filter down to 25 microns with their filter. They have a silicone anti-drainback valve. They have nitrile gasket at the top. I found on the K&N website they actually listed that the pressure relief bypass valve is set between 11 and 17 pounds of pressure, which is a little bit low for the Subarus. I could not find the spec for the Royal Purple or the Mobile 1 on their website. Very little information on Mobile 1's website about their filter, but there's your quick look down between the three here. Quick little side note while I've got these pulled apart, I'm going to take a real quick look at the blue CarQuest brand premium filter. As you see on it, its top plate is nearly identical again to the Mobile 1, the K&N, and the Royal Purple. It also has a Y cast into the top plate. There is also a number 2. Not sure what that means. The anti-drainback valve, nearly identical again. I can only assume silicone, as it matches nearly every one of these. And the actual cartridge, the media, appearing to have the exact same top plate as all the other three. The only difference is the bottom plate is solid on this unit, actually having an internal pressure bypass valve. You see the coiled spring inside with your bypass valve here, and looking at the bottom of the case, you have a flat stamped spring. But we'll get a little bit more in depth into this in a minute. I just wanted to show the super similar build of the box standard CarQuest premium filter compared to these high performance higher end, more expensive filters. Now we'll take a quick look at the MAHLE original OC711 filter. No information could I find on their website regarding this filter, any kind of information regarding the gasket material here, but we do have a nice thick top plate, end plate for this filter, and no real information on material used for the anti-drainback valve. Could be nitro, could be silicone, could be some kind of rubber. Moving into our filter case itself, and our spring, and the case itself. This case is very thick, very sturdy case. It was extremely tough for me to get this thing to cut. It actually bent in before it actually started cutting. Very stout. I do not like that it's made in China. I mean, I hate to be a China hater. Some things made in China are of good quality. It just depends on who is requesting the manufacturing and what specs they're building it to. But more of a fan of the USA made in Japanese filters than a Chinese filter is, just where I stand on that. Looking at the filter media cartridge itself, pretty well constructed. Got steel end plates top and bottom. Like the 6-cylinder Subaru Japan-made filter, we have our bypass valve made into the bottom of our filter. You can see the coil spring inside, and there is also a little piece of sheet metal over top of our bypass valve. And pushing on this, you can see I'm making an indentation on this valve. It's either some kind of rubber or nitrile or etc. So providing a tight seal, this softer material to this steel rather than just sheet metal to sheet metal or plastic to sheet metal. So pretty stout, good sealing bypass valve, I would assume. Then looking at our spring in the bottom of our case, I am pleasantly surprised to see it is actually a nice steel coil spring, not a stamped piece of sheet metal found in most of the filters we've looked at so far. So pretty nice construction, stout casing. Could not find any specifications on the pressure for the pressure relief valve setting or anything to do with any of the materials used for the anti-drainback valve or for the gasket. But other than that, it seems to be an all-around very well constructed filter. Now we'll move to our CarQuest filters. We have both the CarQuest Premium, which is an 84712, and our regular bargain CarQuest R84712. As we can see, there's a little bit of a height difference in these two filters. The base CarQuest seems to be about 1/4 of an inch taller. Other than that, I believe they're about the same diameter. Looking at the base plate again, like I said earlier, it appears to be very similar to the K&N Mobile One Royal Purple base plate. Stamped with the same Y in it, 6-hole design, very similar. The bypass valve being silicone and very similar in design to the one used in the K&N Mobile One and Royal Purple. And again, as stated before, the cartridge, very similar top plate. Only difference is the bottom plate is cast with the bypass valve made into it. It is also a soft rubberized bottom gasket here. I don't believe it's a hard plastic or metal. It appears to be, yeah, I can put an indentation in it. So that's going to be a superior seal, this softer material to the metal casing rather than metal to metal or plastic to metal. You can see a nice coil spring inside, nice helical center support construction to the case rather than a rolled single piece of steel. And as we see here, there is a piece of sheet metal over that rubberized valve, and there is actually another coil coming into the center there to hold that piece of metal down. And our canister media spring is a stamped out piece. Moving over to the base CarQuest filter, which, if I recall correctly, or if the gentleman at the Advanced Auto Parts is correct, I believe these filters are now made by Baldwin. I know in the past they were Purolator made, but I cannot say one way or the other which actually they are. have a very similar anti-drainback valve. If I can get it release here. That sucker is really in there. But nice big anti-drainback valve. I'll ensure the material. Pulling out our media and our spring. Our spring, like in the premium, is a stamped steel spring for our cartridge. Nice tall cartridge, a lot more actually, comparing them side by side. Surface area for contaminant and particulate trapment. Our top plate and bottom plate are both steel. Our pressure bypass valve is made into the bottom of our filter, metal and metal, with our integrated spring. And we have the same helical center support design as seen on most of the nicer filters, and also where our media ends and meets, it is stamped together with a nice piece of steel here, whereas on the premium it is glued together. So looking at this, as I said before, I believe I was told that these filters are now made by Baldwin, but looking at this bottom bypass valve, it looks almost identical to the design we will see in the Purolator filters when we move to the Purolator. So I would assume that the base filter is still Purolator made, just by what I can see, and that the premium filter is most likely made, could be made by Baldwin, as I was told. I'm not sure, but whoever the manufacturer is for the K&N, Royal Purple, and the Mobile One probably has a hand in this too, due to the large similarities between these four filters. So, appears that if you want to save some money over the higher end filters, performance filters here, you can do so just by buying a premium CarQuest oil filter. Moving on to our Wix filters, we have our base Wix and our Wix XP. Our base Wix is a 57712 part number, and the Wix XP is a 57712 XP. The Wix filters, Wix provides a lot more information than the majority of these oil filter companies on their website in regards to the filter. The base Wix filter uses enhanced cellulose media. Bypass valve is set to 23 psi, right at where Subaru wants the bypass pressure to be. And it has a 300 psi burst strength. On the XP filter, again, we have a 23 psi bypass valve setting, just like Subaru wants, and it is a synthetic media in its cartridge. Also has a 300 psi burst strength, but no other information could I find on the website regarding materials for their gaskets. Their top plates look nearly identical, same amount of holes, same size. Both have a number 20 cast here in the bottom. Here on the back side, our anti-drain back valve, very nice, different design than we've seen on any of the other filters. Looking at it, I would assume it's a silicone, but it is a very tight form-fitting valve to the top of our filter. And as we see here, it is marked Parker, same as on the Fram and OEM filter. I'm assuming that is our manufacturer for these anti-drainback valves. But very nice design. It completely covers up the holes, whereas on some of the filters, it's sitting below and only partially covers. That is a really nice looking part there on the Wix. Pulling out our actual filter media on both. Looking at our actual media on both of our filters here, we see that we have steel top and bottom plates on both the standard Wix and on the Wix XP. On our Wix XP filter, we see that same integrated bypass valve into the bottom plate, similar to the OEM Tokyo Roki filter on the H6. It also appears to be some kind of rubber or nitrile material. Actually, no, it's a harder material. I'm not getting any kind of divots on depression. So it appears to be maybe a coated piece of steel. I cannot tell if there's an O-ring gasket or anything in there, but there may be. Also, we have our nice big coil spring applying our pressure to that bypass valve. As we see, we have a helical design for the core backbone of the filter. Nice big flow holes. We can see through the flow, through the holes that flow, that there is a wire mesh reinforcement behind this media that makes up the filter. Moving to the base model, our bottom plate is solid. This is the first time I've seen a design like this in any of these filters. I'm assuming our pressure relief bypass valve is this assembly here, but I'm not exactly sure how this works. I don't know if the entire filter moves down to bypass or what the deal is here. There is a coil spring made inside of the bottom half of this piece, and we have holes around here that appear to have like a silicone O-ring clamped around them, but I'm not exactly sure how this works, but I'm assuming that has got to be how this filter goes into a bypass if needed. Same helical design to the backbone. Lots of glue on this though. There's quite a bit coming through, kind of sloppily put together there, but not terrible. Not a lot of it on the actual filter media itself. Nice metal clamp there where the ends of the media meet on both filters. As we see with our XP, we get slightly larger surface area, a little bit taller piece for more filtration. I'm assuming it's cut down due to this bypass valve assembly here. And then looking at our springs in the bottom, nice steel coil springs instead of a stamped metal piece. Very similar to the MAHLE's design with the rolled coil spring. Very nice. And looking at the cases, both are a little bit to the thinner side, but still nothing too flimsy. About on par with the Fram and the OEM filter when it's coming to the thickness and the flex in it. But all around, the XP is a very nice filter in my opinion. Just from our initial look here, really like that design for the anti-drain back valve, and like the integrated bypass valve and the nice actual steel coil spring at the bottom of the filter. Last but not least, we move to the Purolator line. We're having the base Purolator, the Purolator 1, and the Purolator Boss filters. Like I said before, we got a 1.2 for the 1 and the Boss, and a 1.5 for the base. I don't think there's that much difference in it, or enough to make any difference in the outcome of what we see in the video. So, with that in mind, we'll get into this last little bit, looking at our top plates here. All three across the board appear to be identical, and they look very similar to our CarQuest base filter, which makes me think more so that the CarQuest filter is actually, the base is actually the Purolator made filter. Both have very similar silicone anti-drain back valve on our Boss and on our Pure 1. And if I remember right, the base has a nitrile gasket, also nitrile on the outer gasket, and on the Boss and the Pure 1 we have a silicone gasket on the outside. Getting through that, pulling the case open. Looking at our cases, all three of them seem to be identical. That said, the Boss does feel a bit more rigid, so it may be a slightly thicker gauge metal than the Pure 1 and the base Purolator. Other than that, just color difference on the cases. Looking at our filter elements themselves, they appear to be identical across the range in their top and bottom plates. Only difference to the naked eye is the synthetic Boss filter media compared to the filter media in the Pure 1 and the standard Purolator. All three use a metal clamp to bond the ends of their media where they meet. The top plates and bottom plates are glued into place. All three have their pressure relief valves cast into the bottom with the spring. The spring very unique for the pressure relief valve, similar to, almost identical to the CarQuest one. Basically confirms to me that the CarQuest one is a Purolator filter. All three sharing the same identical base springs as well. All three of them also have the same helical center support, center tube for the filter media. And differences between our base Purolator and Pure 1 filter. I would assume the difference is in the length of media used. Other than that, they look identical. I'll probably do an addendum video where I actually cut open all the media and actually measure the length and count the pleats on them. But for now, counted these, and it appears to be the exact same number of pleats, and to the naked eye, the media looks the same. So I will basically conclude that that is most likely the case. With the synthetic here in the Boss filter, I'm not able to see through to see if there's any metal mesh reinforcement, but gauging from the thickness of the pleats and the little bit of give I can give in them, I do not think they are reinforced with any kind of metal or mesh. So last but not least, on this video we are going to talk about this Mazda filter and why I have a Mazda OEM filter here for a 2009 and newer RX-8. The part number for this oil filter is N3R1-14-302. The reason we have a Mazda filter here in this comparison is simple. The Mazda OEM filter for the RX-8 is manufactured in Japan by Tokyo Roki, the same manufacturer that used to make the OEM 4-cylinder Subaru oil filter for the US market, and currently is still making our H6 oil filter for US market. If we look at our top plate, we have the same rolled gasket rather than a square gasket, very similar to what the OEM Subaru gasket is. We have our anti-drain back valve, which we will need on our 4-cylinder models, which the 6-cylinder model does not have in its oil filter. Pulling out our actual filter cartridge itself and our spring. Really quickly, I'm going to bring the H6 Tokyo Roki filter in just for a quick side-by-side comparison, and look at our top plates. Very similar O-ring. Like I said, there's no anti-drain back valve on the H6 due to the orientation of the mounting of the filter. And then looking at the actual element itself, the top and bottom steel plates, nice integrated bypass valve there in the center, coil spring, almost identical in our side-by-side. And then looking in the bottom of the case, identical case spring. So that said, basically when you look at the specifications for the 2009 and up Mazda RX-8, their pressure relief valve is set very similarly to the Subaru in 20.3 to 26.1 psi rating, where the Subaru uses a 23.2 psi rating, so right there in the middle. This is constructed by the same company, exactly the same as the 4-cylinder filter. It has the same threads at the top plate and same size diameter O-ring for the mounting. The difference is, when you compare the two, is that the Mazda filter is much taller than the Subaru filter. So the deal with the Mazda filter and running it on your Subaru is you get more capacity, one for oil, you get a slightly larger oil capacity, and two, you get a much larger media, much larger filter element compared to the OEM Subaru or the JDM Subaru filter. As you can see, it's almost double well, maybe about a third larger, actually, of your surface area, dirt capacitance, and filtration surface area. Many people on Naziak and other forums for Subarus have been running this filter on Legacy GTs and EJ 255s with no issue. It is a relatively easy to find filter at any local Mazda dealership or online. I bought this one off of Amazon from a Mazda dealership. I believe it was around 13 bucks. We'll have in the description below a breakdown and links to every single filter that I can find to link to buy online. But same filter media, same construction, end cap, bottom cap, pressure relief valve, same case, same, you know, everything. It's basically the JDM 4-cylinder filter with a little bit bigger capacity for dirt and oil filtration that you can go buy here. You don't have to try to buy it or import it through another company. You just go to your local Mazda dealership, boom, pick it up, and you're good to go. It's far cheaper than getting the OEM JDM filter here to the US. And like I said, it makes it a little bit easier to change without any tools because of its taller size. When you're reaching up around the exhaust manifold, you can grasp the bottom of this much easier than you can having to reach in further to grab the little shorty filter. So another nice alternative to your OEM filter is this Mazda filter, and that's why I've included it here in the video. Okay, so this very long video of me talking way too much and looking at oil filters way too long. What do we learn? What is the conclusion here? What is the best oil filter to run on your turbo Subaru? I cannot give you a definitive answer. It still comes down to your choice of what you want to run. I can only show you how they're made and give you my personal thoughts on the matter. Number one filter I would say to run on your turbo Subaru would be to import the Tokyo Roki JDM Subaru filter. That would probably be my number one all around. Tied with that basically would be the Mazda filter, due to the fact that it's readily available, cheaper, and gives you a little bit larger filtration capacity and oil capacity. That's why I would throw that in there. If you're going for just off-the-shelf oil filters, can't go wrong with the Purolator. Purolators were the OEM for Subaru for quite a while. USA-made filter, very well constructed. Very stout from what we've seen. The wicks, now one of my favorites, just due to the fact that they are made just that little bit much better than the Purolator, in my opinion. That being in part due to the actual steel coil spring in the bottom rather than the stamp piece. Far different than anyone else's silicone anti-drain valve, looking to be of a much better design. I'm sure they all work well, but I like the look of it for what that counts. It looks to it looks to cover more thoroughly the surface of the end plate. I'm also a little partial to wicks because the wicks filters are made right here in the Carolinas, in South and North Carolina. Purolators, if I remember right, I know they're made in USA, but I cannot recall if they are made in the Carolinas or where they are manufactured. I believe that the headquarters, it says here Fayetteville, North Carolina. I don't know if that's the manufacturing or the headquarter for Purolator, but another bit partial to them. And also for your performance and price, the CarQuest Premium looks to be a very good alternative to the Mobile One, the Royal Purple, and the K&N, just based on the fact that the build quality and the components are extremely similar. Other than the filtration media, the Royal Purple seems to have a better filtration media than the K&N and the Mobile One and the Premium CarQuest, but the Premium CarQuest end plate and the cartridge itself and the integrated valve, it all seems very, very similar. Probably the same manufacturer manufacture these, and I'm sure that the CarQuest filter is much cheaper than the Mobile One, K&N, and Royal Purple. So that would probably fall around third place if I'm gonna rank these. If I'm ranking, I would say the JDM Subaru filter and the Mazda and the Wicks are number 1. The Purolators will be number 2, and the CarQuest Premium will be third place. So in looking at the OEM filters, after cutting the apart and seeing the insides, I'm gonna not use the OEM filters anymore. I'm not gonna put them on my vehicles. I'm not gonna use them on customer vehicles. And I've never been a fan of Fram, and I'm not going to start using the Frams. I was impressed by the ultra synthetic filter due to having the metal end caps and the better media, but the Tough Guard and the Extra Guard and the OEM filter, I'm not a fan of the composite paper, cardboard, pressed, whatever, glued together end caps. I much prefer the steel cartridge media in basically every other filter. Fram is the only one that I know of that does it that way. And then side note to the big boy, the 14460 L and PL, for your older NA cars, I would probably run this over one of these just for the more filter media and oil capacity. Just because when they were originally coming through, this is what Subaru and Purolator threw on them, and through the years when they downsized this filter, now this has been discontinued in favor of this. I still favor this filter over this filter, so that's the one I would run, and I'm probably going to run on all my older Subarus, on my EJ2295L and on my 98 Legacy GT EJ25D. So like I said, it all comes down to your personal preference. At the end of the day, I can only show you and share my opinions, and that's what my opinions have been. You've seen the insides of the filters. You've seen as much as I can show you, basically. I might make a part 2 to this video, or an addendum to this video, where I actually cut open all of the actual media cartridges, unfurl the media, measure it, get the lengths of it. Whether that's relevant or not, I don't know. The longer, of course, you have in the more length you have crumpled up in your media, of course, there's more surface area, but I don't know if that directly ties into better flow or not if you're packing that much more into the same amount of space. But anyway, I'm rambling on now. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I know I did. A lot of money spent here on these filters. I think I have about $200 invested in filters that now I can't run on any vehicle or are destroyed. And I have about 50 bucks in this oil filter cutter, just so we could get a clean cut on all the filters and take a look inside. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll run my mouth a lot. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.